Good afternoon. How's everybody? So you're all here for the class on how to get rich in real estate without really trying? Sorry. Wrong class. This is the professional standards, 7 most common violations. We're gonna have a little fun with this one. There, you're going to have to also take, let me go ahead and put this up here. Oops, share screen. A 2.5-hour class just like this as of January 1st, 2025. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to determine if you attend this class today, do you have to take another class after or before January 1st, 2025? So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Joel Carlson. Here's my contact information. Now, if you say, Joel, I got a question for you. Perfect. Go ahead and just put it into the chat and I'll go ahead and get it answered. We keep you muted because we're recording this. We don't want the jets landing in your backyard and the dogs barking and the babies crying, things like that. And I don't need to see you. You need to see me. However, I have been doing classes by webinar now for almost 15 years. And some of the things you do when your camera's on, you shouldn't be doing. So if you keep your camera off, that's fine with me. We're going to keep you muted. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it into the chat and we will determine if you're getting the credits that we talked about. So now you say, okay, Joel, I went through the class. It's about a week later. I got a question. Don't call me up and say, or don't email me and say, hi, I have a question. Say, hi, Joel, I was in your 17 common violations class. Here's my contact information. Here's my name. Please call me back, or please email me, or please text me. Okay? I teach not only for the California Association of Realtors, but I'm the broker owner of MJC Realty. I have 3 offices, one in Newport Beach, one in Huntington Beach, and one in Seal Beach. I like the beach. And as an instructor for CAR, I teach a lot of the designation classes, as well as the agency ethics, trust fund handling, fair housing, risk management, broker management, and supervision, the 6 required courses. Pardon me. I'm also a designated instructor from the National Association. I got that designation many moons ago. You have to be able to teach at the national level, and I've taught all in 40 different states. Man, they do real estate a whole lot easier in other states than we do here, I'm telling you. And I'm also a certified real estate consultant from the American College. I just wanted more alphabet soup after my name, so I got another designation. That's basically all the story on that is. Actually, the reason I got that particular designation is when I'm working with buyers. Wait a minute, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever dealt with a buyer, showed them everything in the multiple listing, and they bought through somebody else? Y'all been in the business more than 15 minutes? Well, after that happened to me a number of times, I said, you know what? The next time somebody wants to pick my brain and waste my time, I'm going to charge them, just like any other professional would. You see, I call you professionals because you are defined as such in our state constitution. Yeah, believe it or not, we have a constitution here in California. It was codified in 1879. It says if you have a state issued license, that's the DRE, and a requirement of continuing education, that's 45 hours every 4 years, you are considered a professional. As professionals, are we held to a higher standard? Absolutely. Well, if I'm held to that higher standard, I want to be compensated at that higher standard. So my office policy at MJC Realty is you walk in and say, hi, I want to buy real estate. I say, terrific. The first half hour is free. After that, you either sign a buyer representation agreement or a fee agreement. If you won't do that, don't let the door hit you on the way out. You see, I've gotten old and grumpy. I don't have to put up with the boneheads anymore. Now, this brings me to my 3 caveats. A caveat is a promise to do or not to do something. Here's all I'm going to do here today. 3 caveats. Number 1, I'm going to talk to you about 1 to 4 residential units. And basically the laws that are ancillary to those. They spill over into the commercial and apartments, but those are what we're studying. Number 2, I'm going to talk to you about the laws. In other words, whether it's business and professions code, civil code, or commissioner's regulations. Say, wait a minute, Joel, I thought this was ethics. Yeah, but a lot of the ethics from the National Association of Realtors are laws here in the state of California. And my last caveat is the most important, and that is it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what your broker says, because your broker is ultimately liable for whatever you do under 101.3.1 of the Business and Professions Code. So if I say I use buyer representation agreements, don't go back to your broker and say Joel said, because then I get in trouble. Just go back and say, hi, I was in class today. I learned some things. That way, you will be able to get an answer to your questions in a much timely and efficient fashion. All right, so that's a little bit about me. So let me see, it does not fulfill those code of ethics. Good. All right, so these are the 7 most common violations. Now, you know as well as I do, there's some background involved in this. And the background starts with the craft discipline. The California Association of Realtors takes the National Association of Realtors information, they bring it to California, and they put it together for California. And it talks about are wrongly mistaken or charged with unethical conduct. It provides personal and professional vindication. Now, here's what happens. Somebody says you violated the Code of Ethics, board bylaws, or the MLS bylaws. If in fact you were exonerated from that, then you can, as a participant in that particular hearing, say, I was exonerated. So every once in a while, a mistake is made. Somebody is accused of something they shouldn't have been. And the violations are determined. It's to educate the member. So basically what we're talking about here is an educational process. If you know what these common ones are, and you know what facilitated those, it is a whole lot easier to avoid them. So, and that's one of the reasons I love doing these classes. You know, they always tell you, if you want to learn something, teach it, because you have to know it. So we're going to try and be very problematic with this and not have problems in the future. So we want to ensure the rights of the parties, and we observe that the legal exposure of the boards will be minimized. Because what we have is we're in a trade association that is gathered to not only protect buyers, sellers, but ourselves. And we have to watch ourselves. Otherwise, the government will be more intrusive and watch us. All right, so the code's duties become aspirational at best, you know, and then we have education on them, and we have enforcements, and we're going to talk about some of those different items. So as the training goes, there's the code of ethics. So there are 17 articles in the code of ethics. We're going to concentrate on 7 of those. We'll go through them all just to make sure you got an inkling. Articles 1 through 9 have to do with duties to your clients and customers. Okay, that's fine. I got that one. Those better cups of coffee. Articles 10 through 14 are duties to the public. Now, there's been a few changey poos in here. We're going to see some things that have been added, especially in Article 10, that you have to be cognizant of. Now, I think that 99% of us, we don't have any problem with this. It's the 1% that these sometimes apply to. The last 3 have to do with duties to other realtors. 15, 16, and 17. And we got a few in there we're going to be talking about. 15 and 16 are 2 of the more common in the 7. So with that in mind, the standards of practice have to do with the bylaws and the model bylaws from CAR, but that was given to us by NAR. So when we talk about violations, we're not only talking about violations of the Code of Ethics, we're talking about violations of the MLS, and we're talking about violations of the board or association. And we still have some boards of realtors here in California, so hang on for that one. There's listing procedures. There's what we call clear cooperation and documentation, permission, and accuracy of the info. And we're going to allude to some of those in Article 16 that have to do with our bylaws. And sometimes they're brought in as not only a violation of the Code of Ethics, but also a violation of our bylaws for the MLS. And how we report these sales and other information, again, under clear cooperation, which is from the from the National Association of Realtors as a court case settlement from the Department of Justice. And I'll talk about that as we go along here too. Prohibit what's prohibited, violations, rules, and regs of the bylaws for the multiple listing, and who takes care of that. And just to make sure that you understand, there are 5 different multiple listing services in Southern California. So you say, well, I belong to this one. Well, that's not the only one. So there might be other violations that come up that we go, wait a minute, how'd this happen? Well, that particular MLS, multiple listing service, has violations determinative in those areas. And then the board and association bylaws. Now, these are just, we have an association. This is the rules and regs of it. Not a lot of violations here. We have model bylaws that come from NAR, CAR, then puts the magic widget on them for California, and then the board's local associations put in there so that it is indicative for our particular area. Code of ethics, board bylaws, MLS bylaws, bring that down to our particular area. And the articles that we must use are these, which you say, well, Joel, I'm not going through and looking at all this. I understand. What we want you to do is be aware that a lot of this comes from the National Association of Realtors. Then it comes to CAR. Your directors at the California Association of Realtors massage it, and then it comes to the association, and the association makes changes. So these must be adopted. Next 19 free seconds you get, you can read through those. And an adoption and the enforcement is done by your board of directors. The membership votes on this. And you say, well, I didn't vote. Well, then you got nothing to say. If you don't vote, you're not a part of the system on that. And it talks about your duties and privileges. Now, this is where we're getting to it. So now we got these violations, 7 most common violations. And it's like, wait a minute, under these privileges and duties, where is it that I'm pushing the envelope or that I have stepped over the bounds? And I want to make sure we're clear on that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the code of ethics. So I'm going to do a new share here. We always go to, oh, that's interesting, it didn't come up. And we'll go to here. No, that's not what I want. Here, I want to go to, okay, so we'll go to here, we'll go to here, and stop. Good. Okay, so I'm gonna put the sharing back in here. Share the screen. Oh, all right, because what I want to do is go to the California Association of Realtors. I just want to go to that particular website. That's the one with your the person sitting in the round chair. You ever seen that person sitting in the round chair? Okay. Then you're here. Okay. From here, I want to go over the code of ethics. I want you to get a feel for, number 1, where to find them. Number 2, what addresses and what other articles, or excuse me, what other information is attached to those. So we come here to the California Association of Realtors. Here's what I found. Excuse me, most of the time, we can just go to search and put in code of ethics. Now, if you know where they are, that's fine. I do a lot of searching because sometimes specifically what I'm looking for is I have to drill down some more. So here's the code of ethics, the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. So here's NAR. This is the code of ethics for NAR, but this is still at the California Association of Realtors. And it talks about these different ethics, and it says, well, if you want to see them, you click here. Watch what happens. We go to the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. I mean, we're at NAR now. We went out of CAR to NAR. So the California Association of Realtors says, you want to know what the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics are? Go to them. So there's code of ethics training, there's search the code of ethics, and then there's just a PDF on the code of ethics. So it always starts out with the preamble. And I love this preamble. It says, under all is the land. That's what we're selling, basically, and things that are attached to land and fixtures. Upon its wise utilization and widely allocated ownership depends the survival and growth of free institutions of our civilization. Now, I've been in over 40 different countries in the world, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the greatest country in the world. Let me just ask you a few questions. Do you have to be a United States citizen to own real property here? No. Do you have to have a green card to own real property? No. Do you have to have a social security number in order to own real property? No. Do you have to be 18 years of age or older in order to own real property in the United States? No. That's the Jackie Coogan decision. That was the child star up in Hollywood in the 1930s. His parents were stealing all his money. The courts took all of his money and they put it into real estate. You can't sell it, but you can own it. A lot of the countries I went to, you cannot own real property unless you're a citizen and unless you're in the top portion of the elite. Here, you can own real property and be under the age of 18. You just can't sell it. Okay. So with that in mind, this is part of what I believe is the strengths of this. So if we come down here, it talks about Article 1. So duties to your clients and customers. It says when represented, and this is one of the ones that's always violated. Now, here's what I love about this. Let's see if I can make this any bigger. All right. So it says when representing. Okay, so any one of these, you pledge themselves to protect and promote the interests of your client, whoever your client is, the seller, the buyer, the tenant. The obligation is primary. That means number one. But it does not relieve you of the obligation to treat all parties honestly. Okay, and when serving the buyer and seller, tenants, other parties in a non-agency capacity, and they use this word. We're going to have to get clarity on this because we're in California, non-agency. The realtors remain obligated to treat all parties honestly. Basically, it says you will be honest and fair with all your clients. Apparently, that was so unclear, it needed 16 more paragraphs to explain what that means. So you have Article 1, you won't lie, cheat, and steal from your clients. And then you have 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, all the way to 1-16. To explain that. Now, what I want you to do is understand where this comes from. This comes from the situation where that's the code, that's the Article 1. You won't lie, cheat, and steal. Then they have what they call a grievance committee, pro standards committee hearing. There's a decision made in that hearing, and that is, it comes from the different states. It comes to the National Association of Realtors. They get a number of these complaints and they go, oh, you know what? A number of these decisions made by the panelists. And they go, you know, somebody's not getting it. We need to have an entire paragraph on what that decision was. So like paragraph 1, it says, when acting as a principal, when you want to buy and sell your own real estate, you remain obligated by the Code of Ethics. So you say, well, I'm a realtor, but I'm buying and selling for my own. I'm not acting as a realtor. I'm buying and selling for my own account. Once a realtor, always a realtor. You are to adhere to the Code of Ethics. That was the number 1. I mean, apparently people didn't get that. And then it talks about duties imposed by the Code of Ethics encompass all related activities, whether conducted in person, electronically, or through any other means. Now, Article 1 is one of the biggies. Let me see. Out of the, it ranked number 1. In other words, the violations where people got into trouble and were sanctioned. This is the number 1. Article 1, number 1 violation. And I think probably because it has 16 little paragraphs underneath it that you go, oh, I didn't think about that. Yep, well, that's why we do it. So 1-3 talks about in attempting to secure a listing shall not deliberately mislead the owner as to the market value. All right, in California, you are to give them a range of value. It's called a competitive market analysis. We don't do appraisals. So in this competitive market, it says, here's what's sold, here's what's listed, here's what's expired. Someplace in between there, maybe adding a little bit more for inflation or whatever, is what the market value should be. I know over the last 2 years, we've had the craziest market I've ever seen. I've been doing this business since 1976. I've never seen anything close to the kind of market we had during COVID. It was crazy. 2021, absolutely nuts. But with that in mind, and I know I take a listing, it'd be $1.4 million. It was only worth $1 million, but they'd add another 400,000 and it would sell for $1.6 million. I don't know how they got the appraisals. A lot of them were all cash. A lot of them were 50% LTVs, things like that. The kicker here is in regular times, whatever those are, you are not to say, oh, well, your home is worth $1 million. And we always use $1 million in my examples because I'm a product of the LA City School District and I need easy numbers, okay? So with $1 million piece of property, you're not going to say, oh, what did the other realtors told you it's about $1 million? I'll bet you we can get $1.5 million. And you buy the listing. That's what's called purchasing the listing. You give them some obscene money and they go, wow, you can get $1.5 million. Okay, we'll list with you. And then when the offers start coming in $1 million, maybe $1.1 million, and that's it, you've got the listing. So you cannot deliberately mislead them. Real estate law says you can't do that. We're in California. Remember, this code of ethics are for who? The United States of America. Okay, it's for all 50 states. So some states, they don't have this in there. 1-4 talks about when seeking to become a buyer tenant representative shall not mislead them as to the savings. In other words, I told you, I use buyer representation agreements. I've learned a long time ago that people are going to deal with you. They're going to deal with you if it costs them money to go someplace else. So I have buyer representation agreement and I say to them, oh, you don't have to worry. It doesn't cost you anything. The seller pays me. Well, where does the seller get the money to pay me? From the buyer. So probably a little bit of a cost to the buyer. So even though you're using a buyer representation agreement, what we used to call a buyer broker agreement, buyer representation agreement, you can't tell them there was a savings and there's benefits if there really were not. Article 5 goes on and talks about we must represent, when we represent buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, full disclosure. Now in California, we've had this since let me think. This was 1986. Actually, the court case was in 1984. It's called Easton versus Strasburger. And it happened up in north central California on an area called Mount Diablo. You all remember Mount Diablo? It's one of the 3 Basin Meridians you had to memorize to get your real estate license. Why do we remember this stuff? Anyway, Humboldt, Mount Diablo, San Bernardino. These houses were sitting on the side of the hill in Mount Diablo. The agents knew there were soil problems in this area. Neither agent told the buyer. When the hill started sliding away, big cracks in the road, you couldn't even drive down the road without your car falling in a crevasse. The buyer sued. And here's what the courts held in 1984. You, I'm talking to you, must disclose anything that would materially affect whether the buyer, seller would sell. That was codified. In other words, that was a court case. It was put into our code, 1102 of the Civil Code in 1986. And we have to use a form that was given to us by the state legislature in Sacramento. This is one of 2 forms we were given. It's called the TDS, the Transfer Disclosure Form. 3-page form. Seller fills out the first 2 pages. You fill out page 3. And you must do a diligent visual inspection of accessible areas and write down what you see. So when we talk about disclosure, remember what we're talking about here today is a National Association of Realtors. This is our code of ethics. We already have laws that cover this. All right. So article standards practice 1-5. Then we got 1-6, submit all offers objectively and as quickly as possible. Now, by law in the state of California, do you have to submit all offers? Yes. So it's already law again. Can I wait to submit them? No, as quickly as possible. You receive it, you're supposed to give it to the seller. Now, we had some troubles in the year 2000 with buyers coming in saying, hey, listen, I want to buy this home. I want you to represent me as the listing agent. So I'll get a better deal. I'll be in the first because you're going to get both ends of the deal. And the agents got a little greedy. And they said, okay. And so what would happen is they would get an offer from this buyer that they represent. They represented the seller also. Other offers would come in that would be higher offers and they would not present them. That's a violation of the law in the state of California, as well as your code of ethics. So a lot of those are starting to pop up now, where the sellers came back and said, well, hey, he's the one who told me to do this. And I didn't realize that there were other offers out there, and other agents have said, look, here's the offer. It was not presented. So if you look at your RPA, page 16, that's our broker page. We got our old page now as brokers. It says you specifically in Article 1-7 have the right to say, did you really submit the offer? And if you put that in writing, the listing agent must respond back that they submitted the offer. So you got to submit them all. And then it says, when acting as listing, shall continue to submit as long as the seller wants to see them. So in other words, I got an offer, it was accepted, everybody's happy, it's going to close in 30 days. Another offer comes in 15 days later. Do I have to present that? Yes, by law and by your code of ethics. Now, what happens, you got it, you're in escrow for $1 million. This offer comes in at $1.2 million. Seller says, hey, I want to take the $1.2 million. Well, we know what the ramifications on that is. They take the one for $1.2 million, and guess what happens? We're all tied up in court. So we gotta have a plan on this. And my plan at MJC Realty is, I say to the seller, we got an offer, we're in escrow. Do you want to see any more offers? Well, what do you mean? Well, I'm by law, I got to show you all offers that come along. If another offer comes along, do you want to see it? Well, I've already got a deal. If I look at that offer and I want to accept it, how do I get into it? I say, you go to court. You're gonna have to get sued. Oh, I don't want to see it. Okay, so you write out that you don't want to see any more offers. That way, when an offer comes in, by law, I've got to present it. But if the seller says, I don't want to see it, I already got a deal, I'm happy. Then I don't have to show it. Otherwise, look at what goes on here in 1-7. Upon a written request, cooperating broker submits to the listing broker shall provide as soon as practicable written confirmation that the cooperating broker stating the offer was submitted to the seller. So if I say, I don't think you presented my offer, I want you to prove it. They have to prove that they showed it to the seller. Now, there's only a couple of ways I think you can do that. And it's on the purchase agreement. It's at the bottom, page 15. That's where the seller initials. And it used to say offer rejected. Well, the offer is now a kinder, gentler offer. So it says offer not accepted. And then it's initialed by the seller. Now, here's what the problem is. That initial is underneath their signature. The seller has no obligation to initial that. Now, I always ask them to initial it. I've never had a problem. They've never said, well, I'm an attorney and I know I don't have to initial that. But if push came to shove, they don't have to. If they've initialed it, then as the listing agent, I would show that to the agent that submitted the offer. Seller initialed that they rejected the offer. Here's your offer, and here's the rejection. Otherwise, they have to go all the way down to page 16, bottom page 16, and the agent has to initial bottom of page 16 saying they have presented the offer. Not that the seller received it, but they presented it and perjured themselves if they didn't. So Article 1-7, updated 2020, we want to make sure, and it's on page 16 of our purchase agreement. Somebody just said, Joel, this is all real interesting, but I'm starting to fall asleep. When do we get a break? We get a break probably in about 15 minutes. This is a 2.5-hour class. So we're going to take every 45 minutes, we'll take a little break. So we'll take a break probably at 2:45 and then 3:45 and then 5:45 and 6:40. No, this class is all done at 3:30. Okay, so we'll be done and out of here. So, and if you do have questions, just go ahead and put them down here in the chat. So, or better yet, put them in the Q&As, because then I can see them and record them for posterity as to what. If you want to put it in the chat, the chat is just, I look at the chat as just something between you and the people that are on there. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it into, you say, Joel, I don't have enough information to break down a question yet. I understand, I'm good with that. So could an agent represent the buyer if they are a seller and the listing agent? Absolutely. Under the laws of the state of California, it says you can represent both buyer and seller. Now, when you got your real estate license, they call that dual agency. You bring up a good question, because most of the United States of America cannot represent both buyer and seller, because most of the United States is English common law. So 1620, Mayflower came in, it brought with him English common law. When we were on the wagon trains and we're going across, and we got to California, there was a treaty with Spain in 1848. And it basically said, you, the Western United States, must use Spanish law. And Spanish law says we can represent both buyer and seller. So could the agent representing the buyer represent the seller also? And if they are the seller, the listing agent, yes. Now, do we have to disclose all this? Yes, and that's the big deal. So I'm the listing agent, I represent the buyer. I've got to disclose to the buyer. Buyer, you know I represent the seller. Is that okay with you? Yes. Hi, seller, I'm representing the buyer. Is that okay with you? What does that mean? It means I'm going to get more money. Yeah. Well, how are you going to represent me? Well, it says on the agency disclosure, I have a fiduciary duty. That means highest binding trust. Plus, I have 3 other duties: honest and fair dealings, good faith, disclose all facts known. So I'm going to do that for both of you. I have to do it anyway, no matter who I represent. But if I represent both, I have to disclose the fact to you. So does it? All right. So under standards of practice 1-7, does it matter if the seller landlord gives their seller the waiver, if the waiver is received after the offer comes in, but before the seller sees it? No, offer comes in, you must present it. So here's what happens. I get an offer in, then I get the letter from the seller saying, I don't want to see any more offers. This particular person calls it a waiver. I don't want to see any more offers. I already got one. I got to show you this one. I got this one before I got this one. I got the offer before I got the waiver. So I show it to the seller, says, I just gave you a waiver on that. I just told you I don't want to see any more offers. I understand. I'm just following how law works. Precedent. So I make sure. Seller says, I don't want to see it. Good. We write on it. Seller doesn't want to see. We show a copy of the waiver so that the other agent doesn't think you're trying to sell it yourself. See, that's what the biggest problem is. They say, well, you didn't submit my offer. Well, the seller told me not to. Yeah, right. Okay, here it is. It's in writing. And I always get it in writing. I always show it to them. That's the date and everything. So that, you know, if anything goes sideways, I have something in writing from the parties that says what their requests and orders were as the agent. All right. So I answered that one live and then answered that one live. Good. Oh, I like these questions. This is good. Okay. So Article 7 is one of those ones. It's in our contract. And if you look at page 16, right under it's the broker page, right down there, it says presentation of offer. It goes in, look at this. You know, anytime there's, highlighted or bold-faced print, what do you think? Probably should read it. Good. All right. So it says, acting as an agent, we're good actors and actresses, shall submit offers and counteroffers that have no obligation to continue to show the property. So we have no obligation to continue to show the property. Now, remember, this is National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. In California, do we have an obligation to show the property? There's nothing under law. It doesn't say you're the listing agent, you must keep showing the property. It says you must present all offers. So with that in mind, I think I would make it real clear and get it in writing. Hi, seller. The Code of Ethics say, I have no obligation to keep showing the property. You've got an offer where an escrow is going to close in 30 days. Do you want me to keep presenting offers? Do you want me to keep showing the property? I've never in 40 years had the seller say, oh yeah, keep interrupting my dinner, keep interrupting my day. Yeah, bring them in, leave the lockbox on, I don't care. They always say, no, we've got a deal, we're happy. Now, that doesn't mean anything. It just means that's been my experience. Then it says, unless otherwise agreed in writing. So if the seller says, I want you to keep showing the property, good. Upon a written request of the listing broker who submits a counter offer. So now here's what we got. We're in an offer. Another offer comes in. I said, it's already in it. It's already been sold. They say, we want this as a backup offer. Okay, fine. The broker shall provide as soon as practicable, that's how we say it in California, as soon as practical here, a written confirmation of the listing broker stating the counteroffer has been submitted. So now, offer, counteroffer, was it submitted? Yes. Because in the old days, when I started in this real estate business, you would call up the listing agent and say, hi, is the property available? Yes, I have an offer. Good. I'd like to show it to them this Friday at 6 p.m. Fine. I would show up. The agent representing the buyer, would show up at the seller's home with the other agent there, and I would present the offer. My feeling was, who knows my buyers better than me? And I could present it more effectively. Now, you don't want to be anywhere near that because of the implications of fair housing. It's all about the numbers. Doesn't matter about the people. It's all about the numbers. So with that, excuse me, wow, wait a minute here. So with that in mind, when the counter, in other words, we got an offer, counter offer was submitted, the offer notification of the buyers has been waived, the obligation of the counter offer to be presented. We want to make sure we got an offer, it was accepted. If there's a counter offer to that offer, we have to make sure it was presented and that we got something in writing saying you presented it, it was either accepted or rejected. Buyer makes an offer, seller accepts the offer, you submit acceptance to the buyer. Now, our purchase agreement is a little bit different than it was last year. Last year, buyer makes an offer, seller accepts the offer. You would communicate acceptance back to the buyer based on the fact of one of the three methods or one of the methods. Okay. Now, not only do you offer comes in, buyer makes an offer, you represent the buyer, buyer makes an offer, seller accepts the offer, you must communicate it back to the buyer upon some written, and it's either email, text, or some other method that's approved by your office. So buyer makes an offer, seller accepts the offer, but counter offers. Now we're into the counter offer stage. So now you have to submit the counter offer. So I've submitted the offer. That's Article 1-7. Now I got a counter offer. I got to submit that also. Well, we already got an offer. Well, then ask the seller, do you want to see any more offers? If you got an accepted offer, but if it's a counter offer, you have to make sure that that was presented also. Not, well, we got several counter offers here. We're not going to submit these. We're going to just submit the one that's the best. You're not a party to the contract. You know that, right? It says right on page 1 and page 16, you, the agents, are not party to the contract. You're not, you don't make those decisions. If there's an offer, you present it. If there's a counter offer, you present it until such time as your seller says, I'm done. I have the offer I want. I don't want to see anymore. Every once in a while, well, in the last bunch of years, I have not had a seller say, I want to keep seeing offers. I did on a commercial building about 10 years ago. He wanted to keep, because he accepted the price, but wasn't happy with it. So he wanted to keep seeing offers, hoping he could blow the deal out. Anyway, so then we get down to 1-9. Now remember, we're going through the 7, but we're going to go through all 17 of these articles. So I just want you to understand, we're not going to go in depth of it. Number 1, Article 1, this is the number 1 violation. And I'm going to show you some of the violations before we get done with the class today. Actual violations and what the decision was made by the Pro Standards Committee and the Board of Directors. So, obligation to preserve confidential information. So, it's confidential information. If you have something confidential about the buyer and seller, you're not allowed to give it to the other party. Now, California is very controlling on this. Matter of fact, our last piece of paper and all of our listing agreement, purchase agreements say California Privacy Act. So if it's confidential information, you can't give it. And if you do give out some information, like buyer bought a piece of property, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you have to tell them what you're going to put out there. I'm going to put out for comps. You bought it, buyer. California Privacy Act says, I've got to tell you what I'm going to do with the information. We're going to put it out as a comparable. Okay? Is that okay with you? Then it talks about under the following. So realtor shall not knowingly, I don't know what that means, but I guess you could unknowingly make during the termination of professional services, during that time or following, confidential information revealed by their client. So, I took a listing and the seller says, you know what, Joel, just between you and me, I would take $100,000 less. That's confidential information. Can't give that out during or after. Disadvantage to the clients. Now, Articles 1 through 9 are duties to our clients and customers. What? Okay, a customer, somebody you deal with one time, that's the end of that. A client is somebody you want to deal with over and over and over again. So it's a little bit different. You say, well, how do you make that determination? Well, I told you. When people walk into my office say, I want to buy real estate, the first half hour is free. Then, if I decide I want to work with them, they sign a buyer representation agreement. Well, let me ask you this question. How many of you have ever dealt with a buyer or seller that you wish had never been born? When did you know they were going to be a problem? In the very beginning. So with that in mind, I want to make sure that I'm going to want to work with these people. So for the first half hour, I'm determining, do I even want to work with these people? So when we talk about confidential information, I may not even want to work with them. And I always, it's one of those situations. It's going to be a problem. Why do you? Well, I need the money, Joel. I got to have the deal. Okay. You'll probably give it back, though, to the attorney in fighting the court case. And it talks about 3, includes confidential information. So consent, full disclosure. Well, we already have that here in California. Realtors are required by a court order. Okay, then the courts take precedent. It is the intention of the client to commit a crime. We know that's a crime. We can't, we've got so much going on in our purchase agreement now, 16 pages. And the one that I've known about since 9/11 is the GTO, Geographic Targeting Order. I've just never seen it put in print. So on our purchase agreement, it talks about a geographic targeting order given by the Financial Crimes Division of the U.S. Department of Treasury. So I think you're talking about this here. Okay. And then it says it's necessary to defend employers for wrongful conduct. So in other words, somebody says, you did this. You say, no, I didn't. Well, in order to defend myself, I got to give confidential information. 10, it says, shall consistent with the terms and conditions of your licensure or property management, competently manage these properties due to the rights and safety. And this is where it gets to be a kicker, health of the tenants. Now, California, we're a big tenant. As a matter of fact, we're a rent control state, so tenants first. The National Association of Realtors say if you do property management, you've got to take into account the health and safety of your tenants. Okay, so it complies. That's remember, NAR, that's the United States of America. 11, it says when employed to maintain property shall due diligence to make reasonable efforts to protect it. Now, when I first read this and I went through what they were talking about, it became obvious to me that I'm an insurance agent. I've got to make sure it's got the proper insurance. When did I become an insurance agent? Well, if you're doing property management, you got to make sure that certain things are met. Now, I don't know how to grade insurance or how to make, all I know is this is the type of insurance that's available. Seller, if you don't want it, tell me why. I can put it as a note. And then if anything happens, don't come back and talk to me. 12 talks about when entering into listings, the company policies regarding cooperation. And if it's a tenant, compensation for the listings, and any potential listing broker shall disclose a dual agency situation. So remember I told you, most of the United States, you cannot be a dual agent. California, we're under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We can represent both buyer and seller. That's why sometimes I go to different conventions and they see your badge. They go, oh my gosh, you're from California. I'm from New York. How do you represent? I can't represent both buyer and seller. How do you represent both buyer and seller in California? I say, it's easy. I'm schizophrenic. Well, they all think we're crazy out here anyway. So 13 says when entering into shall advise the potential that what your company policies are regarding cooperation. In other words, we're representing a buyer. This is a buyer representation agreement or tenant. And I have one of my broker friends, he does tenant only leases for offices. So this applies to there. The amount of cooperation paid by the client, any potential additional offsetting compensation. So you might be getting other monies for advertising or other kinds of things, any kind of, you must disclose it. So it talks about when entering into, you must advise the potential clients of, well, state of California, you must disclose anything that would materially affect with the buyer, seller itself, and any potential tenant, disclosure of a dual agency situation, and 5, the possibility not to treat the existing terms less confidential. This is all confidential. We just talked about that previously. So this is Article 1. This is where we're having our biggest problems, Article 1. And it's 16 little paragraphs underneath it that we go, I don't have to worry about that. Fees, prepared for appraisal. Do we do appraisals? No. Under laws of the state of California, unless you're licensed under the USPAP, you cannot do appraisals. We do competitive market analysis, but it will not be contingent upon the amount. In other words, I say hi. If you list with me, your valuation based on the CMA will be 1.2. If you don't list with me, it's 1 million. Well, that works better for appraisals than it does for, but it is the same concept. Don't buy the listing. Realtors responsible for inquiries, cooperating brokers with the seller's approval. Sometimes the sellers tell you, no, they don't want you to do certain things. Most of them say, whatever it takes to market the property for the highest price, shortest period of time, least amount of hassle. That's what I want. Okay, isn't that what all sellers want? I want to sell it for as much as I can in the shortest period of time with the least amount of hassle. That's always in my listing presentations. Those 3 things, I always cover those because that's what they want. It talks about where the authorized realtor shall also disclose, if asked, whether other offers were obtained. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I want to talk a little bit about this because this is a bone of contention legally. Pardon me. We're getting into a legal situation. The let's go to here. All right. I'm going to show you the real estate purchase agreement here. We're going to go here. This is the real estate purchase agreement. It always starts out with the agency disclosure, and then it goes to fair housing. And then let me make sure here. So new share. So what we're talking about here is disclosure authorized if asked whether other offers have been obtained. So this is in your code of ethics. And I always thought, wait a minute, you can't do that. So let me go ahead and reshare our agreement here. This is our real estate purchase agreement. Then the next page that we talk about is possible representation of more than one buyer and seller. Now, here's what this has to do with, and then we're going to take a break. This form is required by law. This is the agency disclosure form. This is the disclosure. It's required by law. It was given to us in 1988. It's one of 2 forms. It was given to us by the state legislature. Every other form we use in ZIP form was put together by Standard Forms, a group of realtors such as yourself that used to meet about 4 times a year and make up these forms. I think they meet about every 15 minutes because this is the sample forms book. Look at this sample forms book. That's over 250 forms that could be in a real estate purchase agreement. Only 2 of these came from the state Sacramento. Every other form came from a group of realtors such as yourself that sat down and wrote them up. This is a disclosure. This is an advisory. This is a disclosure and consent. And here's what this says. This is actually part of the agency disclosure because when that was first written in 1988, we didn't have multiple buyers. We didn't have multiple sellers. This is a new phenomenon. And the description of dual agency was not very good. Now, This form has been part of our purchase agreement for the last 10 years, but nobody's ever read it. They put it into our, let me make sure you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing here. Good. They put it into our code of ethics. Okay. This is in our code of ethics, been around for 13 years now. And here's what this particular form says. This is part of the purchase agreement. It's the third form of the purchase agreement. Now, here's my question. Realtor A has a listing. Realtor B calls up, says, hey, I got an offer on your listing. Realtor A says, send it on over. Realtor B sends it over to him. My client calls me up, says, hey, I got an offer. I want to make on A's property. I say, terrific. I call up Realtor A. I say, hey, Realtor A, you still available? Realtor A says, yes, property's still available. I say, do you have any offers on it? He says, yes, I have offers on it. I say, who's it from? He says, from Realtor B. I say, what is it? Can Realtor A tell me what Realtor B's offer is? Offers are not necessarily confidential. Buyers advise that the sellers or the seller's agent may disclose the conditions or the terms of the buyer's offer. It's right there. It is signed by the seller, it's signed by the buyer, it's signed by the buyer's agent, signed by the seller's agent. This is a form, a disclosure with consent. It is part of 2079 of the Civil Code, which is agency. And it is confirmed by our code of ethics. So if another agent calls up and says, hey, what's Joel's offer? Realtor A can tell them. You say, whoa, wait a minute. What if the seller doesn't want that? What seller would not want more money for their property? They all want more money. So based on that, okay, based on that, it is the buyer. This offer is being written for the buyer. This is a purchase agreement. Okay, this is a real estate purchase agreement. So you're sitting representing the buyer. What I want you to know is you got to give them this disclosure, and the disclosure says the seller can disclose what it is. If the buyer says, I don't want him to do that, then you need a confidentiality agreement. That's all I'm saying. Remember, 3 disclosures, 1 to 4 residential units. I'll tell you what the laws are, where they are. Doesn't matter what I say, matters what your broker says. This is the laws. I'm just telling you what the law is. Part of you sign this. There's no reason that you have not read it, other than we have so much dadgum stuff to read. We've got over 250 pages of forms that possibly could be added to this transaction. It's getting interesting out there. I'm just telling you what the law is. Let me see what our question is here. All right. So the AD is required for new construction or purchase of home builders. Yes. Let me see what this. Yes. So the AD, these are all required by law. Okay, it's been since 2021 on this. And I'm just telling you and if you say, as we go along here today, you say, Joel, you look like a nice guy, but I don't think you know what you're talking about. Area code 213-739-8282. That's the legal hotline. These are real estate attorneys. Your dues pay their salaries. They are to give you legal advice in these situations. As a matter of fact, I got the number memorized because I call them all the time. Nothing in my introduction said I'm an attorney. I want to make sure that the information I'm giving my clients is proper and correct. That's why I always get a copy of it. And I show them a copy. It's not me saying copy. And I always tell the attorneys when I talk to them at CAR, where'd you get that from? Oh, it's 2079 in the Civil Code. Where'd you get that from? Well, here it is right here. It's right on this is the agency disclosure. It's the back page, 2079 is Civil Code. And little tiny print, nobody reads. You need to be knowledgeable in the area in which you deal. As a matter of fact, that's the biggest court case we're having right now in California, this one right here. Diligent exercise of reasonable skill and care. The agents do not know what's going on in that area and how to fill out the forms properly. If you're dealing in residential property, you need to understand the residential forms that have to be filled out, plus what the rules and regs are for the city and the county. I can tell you what the state of California is for disclosures. I don't know what it is per city and county. You need to have that information. All right, so let's go back here. And it says right in our code of ethics, you can do this. 16 talks about shall not use access or permit to be used access or manage any other conditions other than those authorized by the owner. So in other words, I have a listing on the property to sell it. I'm not a property manager. It doesn't say I can property manage. So I can't put it out as for rent or lease unless I have an agreement to that effect. All right, good. So when we get back from our break, we're going to start right there. Good to know, required by law, you betcha. And it's 2079 in the Civil Code. All right, so just to be clear, if the Realtor C asks what the offer is, the seller has already signed, the buyers have signed, you can disclose the offer without going back to the seller and ask? No. I would always go back and ask. They never read what they sign. Nobody reads what they signed. It's one of those things I hate reading this stuff. I really, really hate reading. But I know if I don't, I always get in trouble. Seller didn't read it. I always go back to them. I say, do you realize this is what I can do? Seller says, no, I didn't realize that. Is that okay with you? Well, let me think about it. Okay, fine. And we think about it. And then they go, well, yeah, sure. Crud. If they bid it up, I'm fine with that. It's the buyer that you need to make sure that they know this specifically. Betcha. Good. All right, break time. We're going to take about a 10-minute break here. Let's make it to 7 minutes. 5 minutes after 3, we'll come back here and we're going to go over Article 2, which is, let me see, 1, 2, 3. It's the 4th out of the 7, Article 2. So get up, stretch, run around the room. I got to get some more Go Juice. You know, everybody's drinking juice. I got to have my Go Juice here. So we'll be back here in 5 minutos. I know somebody's saying, wait a minute. You know, there's 7 items here. You've only gone over 1. That's because that's the biggest one. 16 paragraphs. Number 2 talks about shall avoid aggressive misrepresentation or aggravation. All right. Exaggeration, misrepresentation, concealment of pertinent facts. Okay, so why would this be number 2? Why would this be the second most violated, or actually it's 4th most violated? Well, you have an obligation to discover and disclose adverse factors. Now, this is Eason versus Strasburger. We already covered that. You must be knowledgeable in the area in which you deal. Okay, so with that in mind, if you're selling property in Orange County, you need to be knowledgeable about the 5-page local disclosures put out by the Orange County Association of Realtors. It talks about the toll roads, it talks about San Onofre, it talks about the dump, it talks about the prison, it talks about all sorts of stuff. So you say, well, I never heard of that. Well, that's why we do these classes. I want you to as a matter of fact, you'll find it. It's your association. Just go to educational materials, sign in, and it'll be right there. It's a 5-page form and it says local disclosures. So number 2, factors determined as non-material by law or regulation, or which expressly referred to, are not subject to this. But let me just tell you something. You're in California. Article 2, Standards of Practice 2-5, that don't exist. Everything is regulated and everything must be disclosed. That's Eason versus Strasburger, 1984, codified under 1102 of the Civil Code. And we have court case after court case after court case. As a matter of fact, we have a form now called the SBSA, Statewide Buyer and Seller Advisory. It's 14 pages of court cases we've lost as realtors. 68 of them. You're going to have to disclose something. Let me see. The next one we've got is 9, number 9, paragraph 9. 3 goes in and talks about cooperate with other brokers, except when you're told not to. That's how you get your money. Cooperation. And number 4 talks about acquire an interest in a piece of property without going through this. Okay. And 5, look at 5, look at 5. It is so clear there's not even a standard of practice underneath it. It says shall not undertake provide professional service concerning the value where the present or contemplated interest in it without disclose. So if you're going to buy it, you don't say, hey, it's only worth $1 million when it's worth $2 million. 6 talks about not accept any commission without it telling everybody. So in California, we can get commission from the buyer, commission from the seller. We got to disclose that fact. And that disclosure has to be in writing. Good. Everybody got to sign it. 9, wait a minute, let's go to 7. 7 says transaction shall not be no compensation for more than one party, even a permitted way law without disclosure. Well, we already have that here in California. See, we're learning, this is stuff we've had since day one in California. Well, since 1848. Article 8 shall keep a special account on appropriate financial institution. What's this talking about? This is talking about 10145 of the Business and Professions Code. Number one reason agents lose their license, state of California, it's trust fund handling. In the purchase agreement, it says the buyer will wire the money to escrow. We never touch it. I love that fact in California because that eliminates 90% of the reason you can lose your license. Trust fund handling. That's the number one reason. We don't touch it. If you do, Article 8 kicks in. Now, Article 9, for the protection of all parties. This is number 2. Number 1 was 1. Number 9 is number 2. I don't know how this is new math, okay? For the protection of all parties, shall ensure whenever possible that the agreements related to real estate, including but not limited to listing, shall be in an understandable language. What language is that? Oh, you say, well, that's English. No. We don't speak English. In England, they speak English. What we speak is Amerikansky. You say, what? Well, okay. So you say, well, I speak American. Well, is that North American, Central American, or South American? They're all American. So here's what I've determined. I speak Amerikansky. And here's the reason. In 1963, Khrushchev took off his shoe, beat the podium with it, said, I will bury you Amerikanskis. He was talking about the United States of America. So when we write this up, we're writing it in Amerikansky. Now, here's the point I want to make. This is National Association of Realtors. It says it has to be an understandable language. We had a program back in the 90s where we were going to put the purchase contracts in all the different languages. We found out, just like in the United States of America, on the West Coast, we speak a little bit differently than the East Coast, and they speak a little bit differently in the South than they do in the North. So how these things are written and the idioms and the little nuances that go with it are a little different. So we try to write it in a language that is admissible in the court of law, first thing, and then that's understandable. Now, you say, well, what if I've got a client that speaks mainly a different language? Then there's another form in Zip Forms called an interpreter, or somebody who will explain the contract. 2 different forms in there. So if you have that, probably that interpreter or explainer of forms should probably have a real estate license. They don't have to, according to the forms, but I think it'd be a good idea. And that's why somebody who speaks another language and they're dealing with people from their country in a different language, they have a definite advantage over those of us who don't speak that particular language. Then it goes and it talks about for protection when reasonably insured pertaining to the purchase will be kept writing. Everything's got to be in writing. Okay, so nothing of this under the table handshake things. In the state of California, 5 elements of a valid contract. Capable parties. That's the one I'm always suspect with my buyers. They've got mental capacity. Lawful object, they own it. Mutual consent, I want to buy, you want to sell. And consideration. All contracts have those 4 elements in the state of California. In real estate, 5th element is it must be in writing. Our next one is 11, which is number 3. But we're going to go through 10. 10 says shall not deny. Now, this is a biggie. This is the fair housing. What I want you to know about in Article 10 is 5, 10-5. This is new. It was adopted recently. And it says a realtor must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets for any of the following: race, color, sex, national origin, religion, familial status, handicap status, sexual orientation, or gender identity. There are 9 protected classes now in the state of California. So those are the 9 we're talking about here. And you can't say, I'm not a realtor, but I'm online going blah, 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 or I'm standing on the street going blah, blah. If it's a violation of that, you're in violation of the code of ethics and can be held liable. 11, the services for which a realtor provide their client, this is number 3 of the 7, shall conform with the standards of practice and competence. This is the one that gets me. You need to be knowledgeable in the area in which you deal. If you're not, you get the knowledge or you shift the risk to somebody who is. You refer it away. So I don't know how to make this any clearer. The courts have held in court case after court case after court case recently that we as realtors are not knowledgeable in the area we're selling real estate. We neglect to give some kind of disclosure or information to the buyer or seller, and now we get sued. And then it's reported back to California Association of Realtors, and then as a CAR instructor, they let me know. So I'm supposed to tell you about it. So the subtext of all of my classes are, you need to be knowledgeable in the area in which you deal. You need to know what the city's doing, what the county's doing, what forms are involved, and how to explain them. And that's why I applaud you for taking this class today, because you're going to get more information you ever wanted, but you will stay out of the problem areas by knowing, let's not get this. Let's not do this. It says when preparing opinions of value, remember, these are just opinions. You will base them on fact. It talks about obligation of the code of ethics with respect to the discipline. If you are not a property manager, don't take on property management. You always want to clear this with your broker anyway. We don't have a license to be an appraiser. If you do, then you're under the USPAP and you have another set of code of ethics. 13 talks about providing consultative services. Now, wait a minute. Can I charge for being a consultant? Absolutely. Well, how do I do that? First of all, you get permission from your seller, or excuse me, your broker, and then you have a form that talks about what you're going to consult with them about. You say, but aren't we doing that kind of like with the listing and sale? Yes, but that's why you want to be knowledgeable in the area in which you deal. You want to make sure that you've gone through the classes so that you can explain them. I took the real estate purchase agreement, the new one we had, the 16-page monstrosity. Actually, it's 26 pages, but I took that class 5 times from 3 attorneys, a CAR, and 2 practitioners. I wanted to make sure that I understood the nuances of it and how to explain it to my agents, my clients, and to the students who take the classes from me. All right, let's take a look here. Poorly written purchase agreement would be a violation. Absolutely. Now, when we say poorly written purchase agreement, you're not supposed to touch the purchase agreement. The purchase, if you look at, so we know the purchase agreement was put together by other realtors such as yourself. We give it to CAR legal to make sure it's admissible in a court of law. So the 16 pages was written up by realtors. Then it was given to CAR legal staff to make sure it was admissible in a court of law. So now here's what we have. We have a situation where you want to make changes. You can add to it, but you are not a party to the contract. It says it on the first page, paragraph 1E, and it says it on the last page, page 16. Under brokers, it's the first thing. It says real estate brokers are not parties to this agreement. So when you make changes to it, you're in violation of the contract. It's not backed by CAR. In other words, you cut and paste. You copy, you scratch things out, put things in. Now, AIR, this is a little different. American Industrial Forms, that's different. We're talking about CAR forms here. Leaving important things out. Okay, that's a violation of real estate law. That's called disclosures. Let me make sure we're clear on this one, because this one always seems to be, we're going to go to a new share. We're going to go back to the California Association of Realtors website. We are. Well, I hope we are. Let's see. No, that's that. Let's move the crud. Okay, here we are. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a new share. We're going to go back here. Up at the top, this is the California Association of Realtors. So we have the person sitting in the chair. I told you there are 41 standard disclosures in the sale of a single family home owner occupied in the state of California. 41. If we got together as a group, we couldn't come up with 41, but I think it's important that you understand what those are. That eliminates 90% of the problems you're going to have with ethics. So you come to the person sitting in the round chair. I always know I'm here. If somebody's sitting in a round chair, I don't know what the significance is, but I'm at the California Association of Realtors. You might want to write this down so you remember how I got here. First page, then I clicked on Transaction Center. From Transaction Center gave me 4 more tabs. I came over here to risk management. Is risk management a big deal? Absolutely. I clicked on risk management. It talks about the RPA. It talks about Q&As, legal Q&A put together by your legal staff, and it talks about disclosures. So I clicked on disclosures. It said, here's the disclosure charts. When I looked at this 15 years ago, there was only one, the sales disclosure chart. Sales disclosure chart is the one that I teach for the realtors, Orange County realtors. And we go over this chart. It's broken up into 4 areas. The first 3 columns are 1 to 4 residential units. If you're selling apartments, this column, commercial, this column, mobile homes, this column, the actual CAR form and the law. $48 disclosures, of which 41 are required. You know how I figured out 41? I just took the first column and I counted the yeses. If you're selling a single family home in this California, those are the California laws. By law, it tells you right over here, here's the health and safety code, here's the civil code. You need to be knowledgeable in the area in which you're dealing. So when we come back here and we're talking about our code of ethics, code of ethics. Okay, back here, we go to our code of ethics. On standards of practice, Article 11, standards of practice 1-3, consultative services, we can charge that. We just have to disclose that fact. Let me make sure you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Good. Then it goes on. The next one after 11 is 12. Be honest and truthful. Golly, how can I mess up on this? Well, there's a few court cases in California and several cases of pro standards where the realtors lie like a rug. So in your advertising and marketing, it talks about must not represent that their brokerage services to clients are free. This is a decision that was made. It was part of our agreement, excuse me, with the Department of Justice. In the year 2000, the Department of Justice sued us and said, hey, you guys are a monopoly. The National Association of Realtors said, what? So they said, you're saying things are free. Well, what was happening is not in California, we've never said that. In some of the different states, they were saying free CMA. Well, ain't nothing for free. If you list your home with me, you paid for it. So we can't use that. It went on to talk about offering prizes and things. It's in itself is not unethical, as long as you disclose that fact. It talks about shall not offer to lease and shall not quote a price different because of different people. I'll quote you a price, I'll quote you a different price. Got to be the same for everybody. And this is, not advertise or permit advertising of listed properties on any medium without first disclosing the name of the realtor's firm. And then we got advertising, listing brokers for lease and sale shall disclose their status. Am I an owner? Hi, this property is listed. I'm the owner and I'm a realtor. And it goes on and talks about who can participate in this and who can say it's sold. If you were not the listing agent or the one representing the buyer, you cannot advertise that without disclosing who those agents were or that company. Now, that's real estate law here in the state of California. It's also part of your code of ethics. And you will present a true picture. This is my favorite one right here on your websites. I love it. I go through these different things and they show, oh, this property is for sale. I go, wow, that's a good deal. I call on it and they go, oh, well, that's sold, but we have others. When did it sell? Oh, about 2 years ago. Well, why is it still on your website as available? That's a violation of law as well as your code of ethics, Hot Rod. It's the little things. Then website disclose the firm's name. And also look at 1210. It says obligation to use a true picture in their advertising. So if you only deal with little green people, you can't just put little pictures of little green people in there. That's a violation of civil rights, fair housing, as well as California real estate law. You have to have a broad spectrum and make sure you're not manipulating anything or presenting the content developed by others without contributing or knowing. So in other words, don't just say, oh, that looks good and use it without reading it. Who am I talking to? Real estate brokers. You should probably look at it too as the agents involved. And also intending to share consumer information gathered without possible apparent violation. In California, you can't do this. It's a California Privacy Act. You have to have permission. And if you don't have permission and you do it, boom, you're going to get fined. This is state law. 13 talks about, or 12-13, obligation to present a true picture in your advertising wherever. So if you're using business cards and you're on the mall, on your shopping carts, you got to have a true picture. That's that's number 12. That's the next one. I think that's number 5 out there of the ones that are violations. Let me see, we had a comment here. Why were the regulations set up recently to require the buyer's agent's commissions to be disclosed, but not the seller's compensation too? This was a decision that was made by remember I told you in 2000, Department of Justice sued the National Association of Realtors, and they said 4 things. Number 1, you must disclose what the commission is to the buyers. So I'm the listing agent. I have to, and I put it out on the MLS. I got to tell you as the buyer's representative how much your commission is going to be. That was the first thing. The second thing was, once I give it to you, once I put it on the MLS, it goes out to the internet. So I can't scrape the commission out of that. I have to leave the commission in there for the internet. This is the DOJ. Came up with 4 items. The first one is you got to put in the commission to the buyer's agent. Second one is the commission goes out to the internet. You got to put in the commission to the buyer's agent to the internet. The fourth one was, is there anything for free? We talked about that one. And the last one was, and this is the Department of Justice sued the National Association of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors basically said, we'll do all of this. And in March of 2021, signed with the DOJ saying, we, the National Association of Realtors, based on clear cooperation, will make sure that all our associations are complying with these 4. The fourth one was you have to give them access to your lockbox. Well, I use Supra. Supra says, who are you? You can use this lockbox and we'll give you permission. So I don't have anything to do with your member of Supra. You can get into my lockbox. What they were doing is some states had combo locks. They had combo locks. And they wouldn't give other realtors the combination because they weren't in their association. Excuse me. So those were the 4 things. We agreed to those in March of 2021. In October, November of 2021, the DOJ said, you know what? I don't think we're going to go with this agreement. No. Wait a minute. You came to us. Excuse me. Hold on a minute. Get out of here. Go back to here. I'm sorry. And the DOJ said in October, November of 2021, nah, we're not gonna go with that. Wait a minute, this is law. You're the ones that came to us. We agreed to it. We all signed, the Congress signed, President signed, everybody signed. And now you're backing out? I don't know how that works. Anyway, just to let you know, those are the 3, and that's the reason why you have to put out what the buyer makes, not what the listing agent makes. I got to stop drinking that bourbon while I'm talking here. All right. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I wanted to make sure 13, not engage in any activities that constitute an unauthorized practice of what? Law. That's state of California. You can't, unless you have a JD degree, or no, you don't even need that anymore. Unless you pass the bar, the state of California, you can't practice law. 14, if charged with unethical practice, you will participate in the grievance committee, pro standards committee, arbitration committee, or actually the first two. Unethical, grievance committee, pro standards committee. Let's see. The next one we have was 12. Oh, we did 12. Okay, so we figured out 12. Then we got, see, 12, 15. So Article 15, duties to other, now this is where it gets to be interesting. Wait a minute, duties to other realtors. The last three, 15, 16, 17. Look at this one. It says not knowingly say anything about the business or the professions of another agent. So you're not going to say bad things about other agents. It used to say you will not disparage other agents, but nobody knew what that meant. So now it says you won't say bad things. Again, it wasn't clear enough. So it had refrain from making false or misleading statements, refrain from making false or misleading statements about their businesses. So you're not going to say anything bad. You say, what if I have proof? Well, then you'll go to the grievance committee. The grievance committee will say yes, and they'll sanction that person for being a bad agent. But if you don't have proof, don't say these things, because you'll be called and you'll have to apologize in front of everybody. Article 16. Now, Article 16, we're finishing up here. It says, shall not engage in any practice or take any consistent with a representative capacity or exclusive agency of another realtor and their clients. What does that mean? Here's what that means. I got a listing on this house over here. You're not going to go over and knock on the door. Hi, I know you're listed with Joel, but he's a bum. Cancel a listing and list with me. That's a violation of the Code of Ethics. In California, that's a violation of law. It's called restraint of trade. Okay? It's under a civil code. Or if I have a buyer representation agreement, the buyer signed a listing agreement with me, you will not say, forget Joel, come work with me. So again, I think if I have an exclusive agency listing, or exclusive right to sell listing, or exclusive buyer representation, this says you're not to mess with it. Apparently that was so unclear, it needed 20 more paragraphs to explain what that means. And this is the one we come up with all the time. 16-20. What I need you to do is I kind of need you to read through some of these, because it talks about prior or after the relationship of the firm, or you've canceled an exclusive agreement. This does not preclude the principals from establishing agreements with their associates at some time in the future. So I had a listing, the listing expired. You can go now and get the listing. You're a different company. I had a listing, the deal closed. I don't have an agency relationship with you anymore. You can list with anyone you want. I represented you with as a buyer. You can go to any realtor you want after that buyer representation agreement expires. Signs giving property information for lease that is not consistent. This is we've seen this. This is where signs of somebody died. Nobody knows where their relatives are. All of a sudden there's a sign for sale and a lockbox on the property. Where'd this come from? Well, that's just some opportunistic, maybe realtor, maybe not, puts a sign on there, gets sign calls, shows the property. They change the lock or do whatever they have to, it's vacant or whatever, and violate the law. And this, you see this all the time, not typically in California, but I read about it all the time in the national situations. shall not use information obtained from the listing brokers through the MLS without permission. So if you've got information in there, you're not to use it without their permission. Now, comparables. When I have a comp, I sign off on it. I give you permission to use it. Acting, we do good acts. We don't have any sub-agency in here in California, so 1617 has no validity. We got rid of sub-agency in the 1970s with a court case, Marin County Association of Realtors. We have, you represent the buyer exclusively, seller exclusively, or both buyer and seller. No sub-agency anymore. So we don't have to worry about sub-agency, 16 or 17. Cooperating transactions, compensation, and shall not offer compensation directly or indirectly to the salesperson without going through their broker. The broker has to know about this. So you can't say, hey, listen, you sell the property, give some money under the table. That's a violation of not only real estate law here in the state of California, it's a violation of your code of ethics. I'm just telling you. 14 talks about transactional relationships negotiated that are not subject to an exclusive agreement, not knowingly obligating them to pay more than one. So I say, listen, if you sign this one, you just pay me this commission. If you sign me this, if you sign another one of these, you don't pay me any more than the other one. Well, the reality is you got two signed here. You've agreed to pay two commissions. And you can do this in other states, typically not here in California. Only 3 listing agreements, open listing, exclusive agency, and exclusive right to sell. So, but in other states, they have this kind of a situation they can put together. Let me look here, Q&A. A teaspoon of honey. Yeah, I got to have that honey. Thank you very much. Vitamin C, absolutely. I don't know. I came in here and it's 95 degrees outside, and I come into this air conditioned area, and I was all of a sudden, my throat just went. How did it get? Wait a minute. This is October. How did it get to be 95 degrees? Anyway, thank you for that suggestion. Oh, okay. Look at 13. It talks about dealings concerning property exclusively listed. Before providing substantial services, you will have it signed. I don't understand. Oh yeah, I'll list with you. Okay, I'll start advertising it. No. You get a signature before you start advertising. Acting as a representative, disclosing relationships shall provide a written confirmation. And then 11. Unlisted property. I love this one where they come up and they say, oh, well, the property, what do they call it? Off market. It's off market. My question is, how are you going to get paid? If it's off market, how are you getting paid? If it's listed, then you got to put it in the MLS. So if it's unlisted, what are we doing here? Confirmation of such disclosures. So this, remember, this is the National Association of Realtors. In California, we already have laws. You must put together all of those disclosures I talked to you about, 41 of them. And you have to be able to explain the forms and be knowledgeable in the area in which you're dealing. 10 goes on the buyer's representation. Okay, can you represent the buyers exclusively? Yes. Do you need an agreement for that? Yes, just like a listing agreement. 9 talks about when entering into a representative agreement, making reasonable efforts to determine whether or not the property is available. What? Oh, I entered into a buyer broker. I say we're going to make offers when in fact the property is already sold. And they have these here because these are the different things that go on. The fact is exclusive. Let me make sure here. Agreement entered into by a realtor shall not preclude or inhibit entering into a similar one after the agreement is expired. This is what I told you. When you list your home with me, once it expires, I cannot have a provision in there. You must relist with me. Or if you ever do relist again, you have to list with me. Well, that's National Association of Realtors, also state of California. They have a legal term for that. I can't remember what it is. Where you say you got a something like built-in business agreement or something. Retain exclusive representation of more than one without disclosing the fact. So I got to disclose the fact if I represent more than one buyer. Pardon me, oh, this is terrible. I really apologize. When the realtor contacts the agent of another realtor regarding the creation of exclusive agency, the same type of service shall not indirectly or indirectly initiate such discussions. So, okay, so here's what this one's talking about, and this is a biggie. I'm sitting on an open house. Another agent and a buyer comes walking and they look around the open house. The agent goes outside to make a telephone call. Their buyer comes to me and says, you know what? I like you, Joel. I'd like to deal with you. Or turn it around. I'm showing the house to another, one of my buyers, and the seller comes up to me and says, hey, I like how you demonstrated my home. I want you to list the home. In the old days, we had to go, meh, 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 meh. I can't even talk to you. Now, with this, it says I can talk to you, but I can't do anything until the listing expires. Upon expiration of the listing, I can come and talk to you. So I can say, yes, this is the services we provide. I cannot do a listing presentation until your listing expires. All right. And then 5 goes on and talks about shall not solicit any agreements. However, if asked, broker refuses to disclose the expiration dates. Okay, you got to disclose that. It expires on this date. And we put it in the MLS. See, our MLSs are different. This thing will click on. There we go. In our MLSs, it talks about this. It says, hey, you have to have that expiration date in there. I apologize for going longer. 4 goes on to no soliciting, listing exclusive by another. Okay, that's pretty simple. Knock on the door and say, come list with me because Joel is a bum. And does not preclude you, though, from offering, oh, I don't know what that was all about. So, preclude from contacting for the purpose of offering or providing unrelated services. Okay, so you've got a listing on your property. I do property management. You do property management? No, I don't do property management. I can solicit your seller for property management, not for the listing, for the property management. I offer something different. And then 2 goes into, doesn't preclude you from general announcements. So I can say this property sold in this area. I have a listing in this on this property. I just can't advertise other properties unless I was the listing agent or the buyer's agent and culminated the transaction as mine. And what the implication is, I get these postcards and it says, these properties were sold on one side. And then on the other side, it says, Mr. broker A, B, C, or D, some other broker. Well, the implication is that broker sold all these properties. Violation of real estate law, as well as code of ethics. Good. So 16 and then 17, it goes on to talk about if you're called on to, for arbitration, you must cooperate with arbitration. So it talks about mediation or arbitration. So Article 17. So I apologize for going longer than I was supposed to. I'm coughing so much I had, but I wanted to make sure. 1, articles. You want to write these down? 1, 2, 9, 11, 12, 15, and 16. Those are the 7. And I told you I'd give you a little inkling. So if we go back here to well, let's just go to the disclosure charts, go to transaction center. Let me make sure you're seeing the same thing. If you violate any of these, let's go ahead and sign in here. We have enough usernames and passwords. If you violate any of these code of ethics and you're found guilty in front of the pro standards and it's confirmed by your directors, ethics you will become part of what I call the wall of shame. Your picture will be printed and what happened, what you were fined, and what article. What I did is I went through the last 2 years and I wrote down which articles that they violated. 1, 2, 9, 11, 12, 15, and 16. These all look like wonderful people. I look at these people, I say, I can't believe this. What did they get hammered for? And then I read what they did. And it's like, oh, you need to be knowledgeable in the area in which you're dealing. If you're not, shift the risk to somebody is knowledgeable or get the knowledge. So you've been a good group out there. Let me give a new share here. If you need to get in touch with me, here's my contact information. I don't know. All right, put this back up here. Here's my contact information. Feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be happy to go over. Now, I'm not an attorney and I'm not going to render decisions based on what people have done. I'll tell you what forms you should use and if you should go to the Pro Standards Committee or something like that. In the words of a famous real estate attorney, go out there and sell something. I need the money. You've been a good group. See you in the next class.